What's good, Dolphins fans? Welcome back to the Fins Up Network. There were no players on the field, no on-field activity today at the NFL Scouting Combine. However, that doesn't mean that there was no news. And we had some good news today as Dolphins fans. So let's jump right into it with what I think is probably the thing that you got to lead off if you're recapping any of the news from the interviews that happened at the Combine today. Chris Grier was interviewed. Mike McDaniel was interviewed. And that's where the majority of our news is coming from here. So during Chris Grier's interview, like always, Deshaun Watson's brought up. Finally, he was able to come out, and it's March. This happened in March, unlike last year where it never happened. And we all understand why closing the door on Watson couldn't happen last year because the door wasn't closed. But he came out, said the door on a Deshaun Watson deal has been closed, fully committed, going into year 3 with Tua Tagovailoa. Finally, that right there, join me. Reason enough to celebrate. The beer tastes extra good when you get clarity like that in March. So that's great news. I think it's fairly obvious news. So we'll go on right on to bullet point number 2 from today's news. Xavien Howard. I talked about this when we previewed the cornerbacks for the offseason. Said Xavien Howard, Byron Jones, the team's 2 legit studs, obviously going to be on the roster. Today's news did nothing but solidify that even more. Because what we had talked about on that video, if there's going to be any news regarding either of these players this offseason, it's going to include a restructure or years added to a contract. And that's likely what we're going to see from Xavien Howard, probably in the not so distant future. We know Howard wants to get paid. We all know Howard deserves to get paid. Hopefully the injury bug is behind him. The interceptions keep coming. The solid play keeps coming. A great duo of cornerbacks there. Now working with Madison and Surtain. Love what they're doing at the secondary. Xavien Howard news is also great. Take another drink. Speaking of quarterback, a very underrated signing that's going to happen this offseason is who ends up being signed as the backup quarterback. They talked to Mike McDaniel about that today. Not necessarily who it was going to be. He didn't lead on to any names, didn't give any hints or anything like that, but basically brought up the idea that the team only has 2 quarterbacks right now on the roster. You're not going into training camp with just 2 quarterbacks. So signing a veteran quarterback is going to happen. And I'll go to my quarterback preview episode or video that I did earlier, like a week or 2 ago. My preference remains Marcus Mariota. A couple of reasons. I got into more detail in that video, but just to hit on it a little bit, Mariota's proven in this league. He can do it. He's done it before. If Tua were to get hurt, this is a guy that you can count on for at least a couple of weeks to come in, keep your team competitive, hopefully get you a couple of wins, keep you in the playoff hunt while Tua gets healthy, if it happens again, because that's what we did not see from Jacoby Brissett last year. That's ultimately what decided the Dolphins' playoff fate. They didn't get a single win in any of the 5 games that Tua missed out on the playoffs. So nothing crazy news breaking here. Everyone obviously knows they're going to be signing a backup quarterback. Now it just remains as to who that's going to be. Some of the funnest news from today. This is my tagline ever since Mike McDaniel has been hired by the Dolphins. Mike McDaniel equals a breath of fresh air. This guy is so opposite of what we saw from Brian Flores that it brings new life to Dolphins fans. And it's just so refreshing. He was basically challenged by Rich Eisen early in the week to say, hey, you got to say like these 3 cliches, like coach talk, coaching cliches. Mike McDaniel's like, boom, I've got it in 1 sentence. And literally in his interview today, came up with 4 coach talk cliches, all in the 1 sentence. Rich Eisen broke through basically the crowd of media, came up, high-five McDaniel. McDaniel walked out. And it's just a breath of fresh air. It's a personality from an actual coach. Like your coach is a human being. He's not this robot like what we saw in Florida. So breath of fresh air. And then it wasn't too much longer where we see it was John Lynch that was getting interviewed, the 49ers GM. And Lynch was basically singing Mike McDaniel praises. And he didn't know McDaniel was in the back of the crowd just listening. And when his name was given the shout out, he's given the fist bump, and he gave a little shout out to Lynch, I believe it was. And Like that's the kind of stuff that we're not seeing from pretty much any team. So the fact that the Dolphins have this guy, I'm smitten. I think that's the right word for it. I'm smitten. I think that deserves another drink. Cheers to Mike McDaniel. Ah, so great. Two bullet points left. The idea of Emmanuel Ogbah and Mike Gesicki kind of being the team's in-house prized free agents was brought up. And the Dolphins led on to say, hey, we've had more discussions with Ogbah's camp than we have Gesicki's camp. However, the intentions remain to sign both one way or another, whether it's an outright re-signing, whether it's a franchise tag, transition tag, whatever it is, we want to keep both these guys. I don't put a ton of stock in the fact that they've spent more time working with Ogbah's camp than Gesicki's camp. I honestly think they could even be playing that a little bit, like, oh, we're kind of showing favoritism towards Ogbah, maybe to try to have some sort of bargaining power over Gesicki. All speculation. I don't have anything that backs that, just besides your typical coach and GM talk. But I do think the team is going to try to go out of its way to sign both of these guys. I still hope Gesicki gets the franchise tag. I want to see Ogbah re-signed to an actual contract extension. And by Gesicki getting the franchise tag, you can really see how he's going to do in a one-year sample in Mike McDaniel's offense, and then decide from there as to what you want to do with him. And finally, and what I would consider the least important or headline news from today's interviews, the whole idea of Sean Payton and Tom Brady literally just confirmed what we already know, what we already believed. The Dolphins did reach out to the Saints to see if Sean Payton would potentially be available. Saints denied permission, which was part of that report. We all knew that. And then they denied ever talking or reaching out and trying to do anything with Tom Brady. Like I said, not a huge news story. The Mike Florio thing got blown out of proportion. We should never believe that guy for what it is anyways. So moving on, that's kind of Wednesday at the combine in a nutshell. Let me hide this for a second here. But yeah, if you let me give you a little bit of homework. I forgot to give you an assignment today. If you like the fact that the Dolphins in March finally said we're closing the door on Deshaun Watson and we're sticking with Tua as QB1, give this the thumbs up. Regardless, let's hear some more thoughts of yours on the scouting combine in the comments below. That's all my time for today. We will be back for tomorrow. Till then, fins up.